A hospital claims that at least 85% of their craniectomies are successful. A doctor of the hospital disputes this claim. So we want to identify the null hypothesis, symbolized by H naught, and the alternative hypothesis, symbolized by H sub A. Okay, so let's first translate this statement into words. Hospital claims that at least 85% of their craniectomies are successful. So in this case, we're talking about the proportion of craniectomies that are successful, right? P. And the hospital claims that at least 85% of their craniectomies are successful. So 85, of course, is 0.85. Now, how would we symbolize at least? Well, at least is symbolized by greater than or equal to, right? And if ever you're unsure, plug some numbers in. So let's make sure that this makes sense. So we know 0.95 satisfies the inequality. Would it satisfy the sentence? 0.95 is at least 0.85. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And it's always a good idea to test the boundary value. Test 0.85 itself. Okay, so of course this satisfies the inequality. Let's test the sentence. 0.85 is at least 0.85. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so this is going to be one of our hypotheses. In this case, we just wanted to test the claim. We don't have any additional information, so our other hypothesis is just going to have the opposite symbol in the middle. So in this case, the opposite of greater than or equal to is less than. These are our hypotheses. Okay, since this one has an equal to and it's greater than or equal to, that's our null hypothesis. Since this one is just less than, doesn't have an equal to in it, that's our alternative hypothesis. Okay, so let's put those in. Null hypothesis is that the population proportion is greater than or equal to 0.85. And our alternative hypothesis is that the population proportion is less than 0.85. Okay, so now we conduct a hypothesis test at the 2% significance level. That's our alpha. Okay, so our alpha is 0.02, 2%. That's our significance level alpha. The p-value of this hypothesis test is 0.025. So our p-value, the probability that we get a sample that is at least as extreme as the sample we actually got, is 0.025. So in this case, our p-value is larger than our alpha, right? Remember, our alpha is the threshold where we are comfortable in rejecting the null hypothesis. We have to be, our p-value must be smaller than this threshold, this alpha. In this case, that's not the case. Our p-value is bigger than our alpha. So we do not reject the null hypothesis. We can't reject it. Okay, so let's see what our options are here. The doctor cannot conclude that fewer than 85% of craniectomies are successful. Well, fewer than 85% of craniectomies are successful. That would be our alternative hypothesis right here, right? The proportion is fewer or less than 0.85 or 85%. In this case, the doctor cannot conclude that. So if we cannot conclude the alternative hypothesis, that means we would be concluding the null hypothesis. We can't reject the null hypothesis. And that's the case we want, right? We do not want to reject the null hypothesis based on what we have. So option 1 is what we want in this case. And we have